I used to think family was made of blood and flesh, but to them, I was just a disgrace. That sound, sharp and fast like a whip. My mother's hand landed hard across my cheek, spreading a burning sting across my skin. Her face showed no regret, only a cold satisfaction, like I was a stain. She needed to scrub off her perfect picture. My father sat there, his voice like a knife slicing through the air. "Serves you right." My sister stood clapping slowly, a crooked smile on her face, like someone who just won a poker game. My breath caught, but I didn't cry. I stood up, back straight, walking past the indifferent stares in the room that used to be home. That was the moment I decided I would take back everything that was mine. I'm Claire. Since I was little, my life was woven with soft lies, wrapped in my parents' love. When I was young, my mother used to stroke my hair and say, "Everything I do is for you." When I got older, my dad would smile, pat my shoulder. "Just focus on school. Let us handle everything else." And I believed them, believed it for years, until I found out they had used every cent of the inheritance my grandfather left me, without explanation, without ever asking, to fund every flashy fashion idea Ava came up with. The velvet gowns, the European runways, the whole team of stylists, all to keep alive the illusion that she was some kind of brilliant designer. And me? I got scolded, punished, just for asking one simple question about my own assets they were managing for me. 6 months. No contact, no texts, no calls. And then one day, a heavy cream-colored envelope sat on my kitchen counter like it had been waiting there. I knew that handwriting. Flawless, soft, proud. It was Ava's bachelorette party invitation. I didn't even have to open it. My whole body tensed. My gut told me this wasn't an invitation. It was a trap. The last time I was home, Ava screamed in my face because I wouldn't invest in her couture collection, the one my parents had secretly bankrolled using my trust fund. I remember standing there, a stranger in my own family, accused of not sacrificing enough, and they only ever came to me when they needed my signature to make it all official. I sat staring at the card, unopened, my hands frozen in my lap, as if holding still long enough might make everything go away. But it didn't. It just got heavier, like the whole past pressing down on my chest, all the things no one ever apologized for, all the wounds no one ever acknowledged. I didn't know what I feared more, going to the party or missing the last chance to confront it all. I missed my mom. I missed my dad. And I missed Ava, the version of her that once shielded me at a parent-teacher meeting, lied to protect me from getting scolded. Those little memories, scattered and out of place, kept slipping in, making me wonder, was there anything left worth saving? My therapist's voice echoed in my head, soft like breath. Reconciliation doesn't always arrive in kindness. Sometimes it shows up in saying what no one else will. I booked a ticket to New Jersey, and while packing, I pulled the red dress from my closet, the one my mother once called too loud, not suitable for our family. I folded it carefully, like I was preparing armor for a war. The train left the next morning. I sat by the window watching the world pass. A woman across from me was crying quietly. I didn't ask. We both understood. Some journeys don't need explanations. The old house looked smaller, or maybe I had just grown up. The welcome sign that used to hang on the porch was now replaced with a cold white phrase, "Family comes first." A man in a black suit opened the door, iPad in hand. "Your name?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Claire Thompson." He scrolled for a moment, then nodded. "Go ahead. You're at the side table, far left corner." I walked in. The warmth from the fireplace didn't reach where I stood. Familiar faces, old neighbors, my parents' friends were chatting and laughing loudly. I walked past them, and they quietly turned away like they were looking through me. I sat at the corner table. Metal chair, a napkin folded loosely. A silver marker had written my name in initials. C.T., not Claire. Not youngest daughter. Just 2 cold letters. I poured water, keeping my spine straight like a candle. The sound of heels clicked across the floor. Ava appeared like a movie star at a premiere. White crystal-studded dress, lace gloves, a well-rehearsed smile. "Oh my God, Claire, you came?" she exclaimed, loud enough for the whole room to turn. I stood up slowly. "I didn't think I was invited." She smiled, tilted her head slightly, eyes sharp like glass. "Family, right? You'll always have a place here." The room laughed. I sat back down. The laugh was soft and sharp, like barbed wire tightening around my neck. The first course came. Truffle mushroom soup. I didn't eat it. I'm allergic to mushrooms. As soon as I reached for my wine glass, a clink rang out. My mother stood at the head of the main table, holding up a glass. "Before we get to dessert," she said, her voice like the start of a lecture at a book fair, "I'd like to say a few words." The room fell silent. Even the clinking of cutlery stopped. Nearly 100 people turned toward her, wine glasses raised. I sat still, back straight, hands resting on my lap, palms cold. I was used to my mother's speeches, but this time something felt different, like she was stepping into the lead role of a final act, and I was just the backdrop. "I look around this room," she said, gesturing like a ballet dancer, "and I see loyalty. I see tradition. I see a family that understands respect isn't guaranteed. It must be earned." Her voice floated like chamber music, graceful to the crowd, razor sharp to me. "In every family," she continued, "there comes a time when we must remind ourselves who we are, where we come from, and more importantly, what we owe each other." A beat of silence. I felt her gaze slide over me like heat from a stove. "Because," her voice dropped, "sometimes certain daughters forget." A polite, soft chuckle rippled through the room. I knew they had heard her whispers, that I was selfish, that I didn't deserve this family's love. I set my wine glass down, my stomach tightened, my heart beat against the skin of my throat. Success means nothing if it reeks of arrogance like perfume. "Family isn't an obligation." She paused, smiled. "It's a privilege." Another polite laugh. My father still hadn't said a word, just sat there, eyes steady, arms crossed. Ava swirled her wine glass, her eyes glittering under candlelight. "Money can't buy roots," my mother said, her voice softening, almost sweet. "And it certainly can't buy love." Or respect. Ava slow claps. 3 times. A crooked smile drifted through the room like smoke. I pulled the napkin from my lap, laid it on the plate. I had taken 2 steps when it happened. That sound, sharp and fast, like a whip. My mother's hand slapped hard across my cheek. Everyone froze. My wine glass slipped from my fingers, hit the stone floor, and shattered. Shards of crystal scattered across the tiled floor, glittering like blood under the lights. My mother stood there, her fingers still outstretched, her eyes wide, not from shock but from satisfaction. My father looked up and said only one thing, his voice calm like he was delivering a verdict from a boardroom chair. "Serves you right." I looked at him, at her, then at all the once familiar faces. Frozen, silent. Some avoided my gaze like they were afraid to be dragged in. Some looked down. Some sipped their wine like nothing had happened. Ava exhaled, a breath of relief, like a ritual had just been completed. I turned away. Not in a rush, not dramatically, just quietly, walked out of the room I once called home. The room that used to echo with laughter. Now it was an execution stage. I sat on the front steps. No tears, no screams, just silence between the music inside and the warm light hitting one side of my still stinging cheek. I wanted to remember this feeling, the feeling of being humiliated in front of 100 people by those who once called themselves my family. I didn't cry. I just took out my phone and dialed 3 names I had promised I'd only use if they ever crossed the final line. Nathan, my grandfather's former lawyer, someone I'd trusted since I was a kid, picked up right away. I need you to freeze all accounts linked to the trust under my name. Trigger Clause 4.2, just like we planned. You sure? They're moving money through my name to bypass audits. I don't want them to see it coming. I heard the rustle of papers on the other end. Nathan was already working. You still have temporary rights over your mother's account, right? She never revoked it, and my father's too arrogant to double-check. Then you're the one with final authority over the assets. I looked up at the gray sky, exhaled slowly. File it tonight. No warning, no press, no trace. I heard the sound of typing through the phone. No further words needed. Nathan always knew. When I was silent, I'd already decided. I hung up. Stood. The back of my shirt was still cold where it had leaned against the stone. I stepped down and left that house again. Never looked back. I got back to the hotel after dark. A small room, old wooden walls, the low hum of a fireplace from downstairs seeping through. I didn't turn on the light, just took off my coat, hung it behind the door, then sat on the edge of the bed. My cheek was still warm from the slap, but what hurt more was that no one reacted. No one asked if I was okay. I opened my laptop. The blue screen cast its glow across the wall. Streetlight filtered through the window glass, leaving a faint smudge, like a stain from memory that wouldn't scrub out. I dragged the folder titled "They Didn't See It Coming" to my desktop, picked up my phone, and called Lauren in Geneva. Sorry for calling this late. If you're calling at this hour, it's not small, she replied. Her voice shifted into alert mode in a heartbeat. I pulled up the photos I'd taken from my father's office, handwritten ledgers, a blurry expense chart, a few scribbled notes with the word Fair Route. They're using the charity fund to pay for Ava's wedding. Are you sure? Not yet, but enough to check. Send everything over. I hit send. I need you to cross-check the transaction dates, recipient accounts, and any links to the wedding vendors. If it's true, this is criminal. Good. I don't need warnings, I need the truth. I'm on it now. I hung up and sat still. Only then did my shoulders sink into the chair, like I'd been sitting upright for years, waiting for permission to collapse. Then I called Ryan, the only person I trusted, to turn silence into a weapon. I just sent documents, spending records from the Fair Route Fund, a few internal notes, and transfer confirmations to wedding vendors. I need you to verify. Ryan didn't ask questions. He just said, I see it. If this holds, we'll have subpoenas in 48 hours, and you have legal authority to freeze all accounts tied to your name. I leaned back. The room was dark, lit only by the blue glow of the screen. I breathed. Not deeply, not softly. Just enough to keep standing in the storm I was about to name. 27 hours later. My phone started vibrating nonstop. The first call was from my father. I didn't answer. He called again, and again. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. Claire, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop. Call me back. We can talk. I didn't call back. I sent one line. I'm executing trustee authority. Refer to Clause 4.2, no punctuation. No emotion, no explanation needed. 1 minute later, a voicemail from my mother appeared. Her voice was sharp, choking on rage. You're tearing this family apart. Do you even understand what you're doing? You're ruining everything, Ava's entire future. Then came a message from Ava in the family group chat. The words flashed like they were screaming, Are you insane? The venue canceled. The planners are asking for their money back. The press is calling. You're ruining my wedding. I stared at the screen, silent. No one asked how I felt. No one asked if I was okay. They just wanted to know what I'd done to their dream. I replied. Just one line. The trust fund was never yours. No one responded, and strangely, for the first time, I felt light. Lauren sent the report. I opened the email, reading slowly like each word could pierce my skin. Expenses related to Ava's wedding, including venue rental, floral arrangements, and wedding gown, were directly charged to the Fairroot Foundation account. The account has now been frozen due to trustee violations. Several vendors have withdrawn. Rumors are starting to circulate on wedding forums. I opened my browser and typed in Ava's name. The first result popped up. Number, Scandal in Silk. A bold red headline just below. $1 million wedding suspended amid family financial scandal. I didn't need to read further. The truth, once it leaks, always finds its way. Around 9:51 p.m. The phone rang. It was Ava. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time before finally putting the phone to my ear. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Her voice cracked almost instantly, stripped of the usual calm and glamour. "You know everything's falling apart. The press won't stop calling. The studio refuses to release the dress. The venue says we have to pay in full or lose the date. The sponsors pulled out. Everyone thinks I'm a fraud." She paused, like she was trying to swallow her panic, then her voice came back. Quieter, but sharper. "It's all crashing, and you're the one who pulled the string." I stayed silent. No sigh. No explanation. I just listened, as if every trembling word was a confession she'd never dared to say out loud. Her voice twisted, laced with anger and fear. Then the call ended. No goodbye. No justification. I set the phone down on the table. The screen still glowed, but I had muted everything long ago. Moments later, the phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I wasn't surprised. She always came last, not to ask, but to accuse. Her voice hit the line the moment I picked up, cold and sharp, like a whip to the eardrum. "You humiliated me. You humiliated this whole family. Do you really think you've won? A victory in a pile of ashes?" I let her say it all. Didn't interrupt. I let her pour out everything she thought, then I answered, calmly, evenly, not trying to hurt her, not trying to raise my voice. "I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourself when you closed your eyes and let someone use money from a charity fund to throw a luxury wedding. I just pulled the curtain. I wasn't the one who set the fire." I hung up. No anger, no trembling, just a long silence, like the surface of a lake after the last stone is thrown. No more calls, no more messages. Just me, a dark room, and a quiet that started to glow from within. I lit a candle. A soft yellow light flickered in the still room. Outside the window, the moon shimmered over the glassy lake like the whole world was holding its breath. I folded clothes, wiped the table, boiled water. Small things, but my hands didn't shake. For the first time in years, I was doing things not to be seen, not to be praised, not to keep the peace. Just to hold myself together. I thought about all the parties where Ava sparkled under the lights while I stood behind the door, holding her purse, holding the car, holding my silence. I remembered the look in my father's eyes when I dared to ask, "Where did my money go?" I remembered my mother saying, "Family comes first." But first always meant I had to come last. And I smiled, not because it was over, but because for the first time, I didn't feel small. I was standing exactly where I was meant to be, and no one could pull me back. Near midnight, the room held only candlelight, a pale yellow flame flickering on the wooden table, too small to light the whole space, but enough to keep me awake. Outside, the wind rustled through the pine trees, carrying a sharp resin scent. The whole world seemed still, or maybe it was just me trying to keep it that way. I folded clothes, wiped down the stove, boiled water. Tiny, mindless tasks. But to me, it was the only way not to shatter. Not for praise, not to prove I mattered, just to survive. I used to hold Ava's purse while she performed on stage, used to stand outside in the cold during family dinners just to avoid ruining the image, used to keep quiet because I thought, that's what a good person should do. I remembered the look in my father's eyes when I asked, "Where did my money go?" He didn't answer, just looked at me like I'd ruined some grand occasion. I remembered my mother, who always said, "Family comes first." But she never said it to anyone else but me, and only when she needed me to back down, to yield, to endure. I used to believe I was small, used to think I needed permission just to exist in that house, but now, in this dim kitchen, I realized I had been in the right place all along, and no one could pull me back anymore. A knock on the door, soft, like the person knocking knew this was a moment not to be broken. I opened it. It was the courier, face blank, carrying nothing but duty. He handed me a thick envelope, sealed in red wax. On the corner was a familiar line. "From the Law Office of Vermont, Richard Thompson." I recognized the signature, and I knew if it came now, my grandfather had never stopped paying attention. I stepped back inside and sat down. My hands trembled slightly as I tore open the paper. Inside was a USB and a handwritten letter. Thick cream paper, black ink, shaky but firm strokes. "Claire, if you're reading this, I'm guessing what you suspected has become real. I knew your father wouldn't stop taking advantage, so I created a separate fund, the Vermont Trust. It's yours, entirely, because you're stronger than I ever imagined, and kinder than they ever admitted. Use it to begin again." I set the letter down, took a deep breath, and plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen lit up. A video played. My grandfather, sitting in a wooden cabin, a small fireplace glowing behind him. He wore a gray turtleneck sweater looking straight into the camera. No smile, no tremble. "I, Richard Thompson, confirm, the Vermont Trust was created by me and belongs to Claire Thompson. Anyone attempting to use her name to conceal assets will face legal consequences. You deserve the truth and freedom." The screen faded to black. No effects, no music, just the soft crackle of candlelight in the corner of the room. I didn't cry, didn't smile, didn't scream from being finally seen. I just closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. A sigh that had waited a long time to be released, and in that moment, I knew one thing clearly. They had just lost the only person who ever stayed silent for love. The next morning, when I woke up, the apartment was still dark. The curtains hadn't been drawn, and winter light was only beginning to slip through a small gap. But inside me, it wasn't dark anymore. Something was rising. Not anger, not fury, but a cold clarity, like a January sky. At 8:03 a.m., I received an email from Nathan. The subject line had only one word: prepare. In the body of the message, he informed me that my father had filed an emergency motion with the Bergen Court, accusing me of abusing my trustee powers. I read the email, closed my laptop. No anger, no fear. I had expected this. They weren't going to let everything collapse quietly. They would strike back. And I was ready. I walked into the courthouse with a copy of my grandfather's handwritten letter, a printed certification of the Vermont Trust account, and an encrypted USB containing his video statement. I wore a gray overcoat, my hair pulled back neatly, and walked slowly down the hallway like I'd been here 100 times before. Inside the courtroom, my father sat on the left. His eyes no longer carried the confidence I'd seen in boardrooms. My mother stared at her hands, turning a worn wedding ring. Ava wore a white suit, but her eyes were swollen and makeup couldn't mask the exhaustion. Their lawyer stood first, his voice formal but tense. He claimed the asset freeze was the result of an emotionally driven internal dispute, that I was acting out of personal resentment, and that the freeze was endangering sponsors, vendors, and the family's reputation. I stood, slowly, eyes focused on the judge. I said I wasn't acting from emotion, but from duty, the duty of a legal heir who had uncovered signs of fraud. I presented forged signatures in Fair Roots fund records, audio files of my parents, discussing how to hide assets under my name, and finally I submitted a copy of the second will from my grandfather, clearly stating that the Vermont Trust was created solely for me, separate from any contested family assets. The courtroom fell silent, like even the air was waiting to exhale. The judge reviewed the files for several minutes. His hands didn't shake, but his eyes narrowed as he read the signature section. Finally, he ruled, "My father's motion was denied. The Fair Root Trust would remain frozen pending financial fraud investigation. Richard W.'s will was deemed legally valid, and any unauthorized financial activities would be forwarded to federal tax authorities for review." I sat down and took a long breath. I didn't smile, didn't clap, just nodded like someone gently closing the final page of an old chapter. In the hallway, my father stopped me. His face was red, his voice hissed through clenched teeth. "You think you've won? You're destroying this family." I stood still, looked him in the eye, and said, just loud enough for only him to hear, "I haven't won. I've only just begun." I turned and walked away. The hallway stretched out, wood floors catching faint sunlight from last night's rain. No one followed. No one called my name. And when I stepped outside, the cold touched my face, not biting, just cool, like someone had opened a door to something new. That's when I knew the hardest part was over. But the most important part was still ahead. They didn't believe me at first. But the government doesn't look away. 3 days after the hearing, IRS agents knocked on the house in Tenafly, the one that once stood for prestige and success. File cabinets were thrown open, documents sealed, computers, bank ledgers, safe boxes, all seized for investigation. My mother stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. My father tried making calls, but this time, no one answered for him. They weren't arrested, but everything they built through loopholes and reputation collapsed, piece by piece, like old plaster ceilings under a slow leak. Sponsors pulled out. Shareholders demanded audits. My father's office was temporarily shut down to cooperate with federal review. Ava went silent on social media for 6 weeks. The wedding was canceled entirely. The dress never arrived. The venue demanded damages. Brand partners cut ties. No one mentioned Ava with the word influencer anymore. Just one hashtag remained: fraud fairy tale. And me? I didn't have to speak. I just stepped back and let the truth speak for me. The next afternoon, I left New Jersey. No one saw me off, no messages from the family group chat, but I didn't expect any. The road up to Vermont wound through snow-covered hills, pure white like someone had repainted the world with a new palette, quiet, clean, and free of noise. My grandfather's cabin sat at the end of a small slope beside a sparse pine forest. The wood was still old, the paint still chipped, but everything stood firm, just like I'd learned to do all these years. I stepped inside and flipped the switch. The warm yellow lights blinked on one by one, like the house was greeting me in the same quiet way he used to. That afternoon, I went to the local bank and registered the full ownership of the Vermont Trust under my name. No drama. Just a few forms, a few confirming nods, and a signature, this time mine, with no one signing on my behalf. I also established a new foundation, small for now, named after him, the Richard Thompson Foundation. It would support young women who had been financially silenced, pushed out of decision-making the way I once was, not to give back, but to make sure it doesn't happen again. A few weeks later, I got an email from an old acquaintance in Tenafly. Short just asked, "When are you coming back?" I looked at the screen, then closed it. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I wasn't angry at them anymore, I just wasn't there anymore. I didn't need an apology, because the truth was already strong enough to stand on its own, and my peace, that was the loudest ending to any argument. Every morning in Vermont, I brewed tea in my grandfather's old kettle, set it by the window, where the light filters in through the linen curtain. I read, fold laundry, write plans for the foundation, and learn how to live not in alertness, but in choice. I still remember them, not with anger, but with clarity. I still remember me, the girl who once knocked, asking for an explanation, and now, the woman who holds the key to a home no one else can enter. This new life isn't a replacement. It's a declaration that I don't need to reclaim a place in the old family when I can build a space where I truly belong. And I did, without noise, without revenge, just with a simple sentence I spent my whole life learning to believe. I have the right to choose peace, even if they never gave me permission.